Good evening, Holliston. Welcome to the February 22nd, 2021 Select Board meeting. This evening we have an agenda that will feature, as always, our Fire Chief, Emergency Management Director, Mike Cassidy, giving us immediately a coronavirus community update, followed by our CARES Act programmatic update. Mike, Chief, good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
How's everything going?
Absolutely spectacular. Our numbers are trending in the correct direction. Things are going very, very well. So since last week, we have had 13 new cases. We added 7 on Saturday, and we added 6 today. Our active cases are now numbering 36. Those are spread out over 29 addresses. We've got an additional cluster at a single-family home. We have mostly single cases added in the last week at single-family homes. And then we had a single case at a group home, which has now turned into a cluster at a group home. And obviously, this is the direction that we want things to be trending in terms of lower case counts and lower new additional cases in week to week. But we do want to remain vigilant, and we are a little bit concerned about what could happen with a bump post-school vacation week. In terms of our trends, we continue to publish weekly graph on the website on Mondays, as well as the individual daily counts throughout the week when those change. Last Thursday, once again, published the state numbers. Our positivity was down to 2.27. The state was at 2.7. That made our 4th consecutive week of being in the yellow, and we are now back to a positivity level that we were at the end of October. In terms of our neighboring towns, everybody around us is now yellow, with the exception of Sherburne, which went from green last week to gray, which is the best that you can be in terms of the risk designation by the state. This is not new. This is the same graphic that we've been showing since the end of January. And obviously we are now at the group 2 of phase 2, which includes individuals age 65 and older, individuals with 2 or more comorbidities, and or residents and staff of low income and affordable senior housing is the group that is currently eligible. So that was the new graphic to indicate the new groups that are eligible. And then we have some questions. Some people want to know, what is an eligible comorbidity? So this is based on the CDC guidance. And the state has deviated slightly by adding at the bottom of the second column asthma, which does not appear on the CDC list. However, the state did feel that it was appropriate to add asthma because that addresses some disparate communities that have been hit harder than others, and the governor felt that that was an appropriate addition. So those are the comorbidities. So individuals 16 and older with 2 or more of these conditions are eligible now in Group 2, Phase 2. If someone only has 1 of these medical conditions, they are not until Phase 4, or Group 2 of Phase 4. And then the VaxFinder mass.gov website experienced some challenges last Thursday. They're trying to work through that at the state level. There is also a bit of frustration related to the fact that there has been a change in the distribution plan by the Commonwealth, and they are moving away from individual local boards of health sponsored vaccination clinics, and they're now moving to the larger vaccination sites such as Gillette, Fenway, and as of today, the Native Mall. They are still supporting regional options, but in order for it to be a regional collaboration, they have to have the capacity to be able to do 750 shots a day, 5 days a week, and they need to be serving an area that is unmet geographically by other larger sites. They need to be able to have an 85% administration rate, and they need to be able to report all of their doses administered within 24 hours. So right now, the Commonwealth is still receiving only about 110,000 first doses each week from the federal allocation, which means that they have about 4 times the requests versus what they're actually getting in, which is why they switched from making it available to local cities and towns and are pushing for the larger throughput areas. In terms of some of our social messaging, we do want to remind folks, because more and more people are now having access to the vaccine, that just because you get shot, just because you get the second shot, just because you're 2 weeks after your second shot, you will still need to continue to wear an approved face covering, you will still continue to keep your distance, you will still need to do rigorous hand washing, so all of the same mitigation steps will remain in place even if you have been able to receive both shots. With that, I will take questions on the update.
Thank you. Chief, we'll start with Mr. Sparrow.
Chief, we have to start meeting like this.
I realize that.
I just have one question right now. So, you get lots of information from the state and things like that, and I certainly see, articles in the Boston Globe and things like that. And there was something I saw about potential scarcity of the vaccine, like there was some places, like local establishments that were having trouble sourcing it or getting. I wanted a little bit of a clarification if it's affected anybody or if there's any information you could give people about. I realize that more people want it than it's available.
Yes.
But at the same time, people that who do have appointments can have some reasonable amount of confidence that they're going to get it when they get there.
Depending on where they had their appointment should be able to be honored. The areas that were most directly impacted by having an appointment and not having vaccine available were some of the smaller cities or towns. And the state has been urging all vaccine administration locations within the last couple of weeks on the DPH weekly calls to not schedule appointments until you get the confirmation from the Department of Public Health on what your allocation in the future week will be.
Okay.
So what had happened was some smaller cities and towns that had very good success in early weeks running vaccine clinics and knew what number of doses they were getting on a weekly basis sort of thought that would be their continued allotment moving forward in future weeks, and so they would schedule appointments, but then because the state had more requests for vaccine than they had vaccine coming in from the federal government, they started cutting back what was going to some of those smaller sites. And again, they were looking at your administration rate, and if you weren't meeting the thresholds that they required, and they showed that you still had some inventory left over, or weren't using all that you received in previous weeks, that's when they started cutting back. And that made a lot of the media, both, hospitals had some of their allocations cut back, and then in the last week, a lot of cities and towns were told, moving forward, don't plan on any doses for a long time.
Okay.
So that's where that comes from. But so the likelihood of someone having an appointment and either having it canceled or getting there and discovering that it's no longer available should be minimal now, because especially as they're consolidating the sites where they're pushing out the vaccine to. And again, if people are going to a Natick Mall, to a pharmacy, I know right now the Milford Regional Medical Center is full for this week. I know that the Milford CVS currently is full and doesn't have any appointments for this week, but we would urge people to continue to log in later on in the week and check when new doses, because what happens is the sites get confirmation from the DPH of what the next week's allocation will be, and that's when new appointments can then go live on the website, which is what led to the crash on Thursday, because everyone knew at 8 o'clock on Thursday morning that they were going to be able to log in.
And they wanted to get those Beatles tickets.
Yes, and when you added an entire new age bracket and category, then a whole bunch of people were now competing against the 75 and older for a finite number of spots. It will taper off, and it will stabilize, and as the supply chain from the federal government increases, and the state starts getting more than 110,000 doses per week, it will improve the user experience, but for the time being, the messaging that we're urging everyone is be patient. There will be vaccine available for you. It just may take you a little while to get the appointment.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. That's all.
Thanks, Ben. Tina.
I only have one comment. So I received a message from a member of our community who said there's a concern, and I just want to make sure this message is out there among our departments as well, that when our town employees are out on the road interacting with the public, that they need to wear their masks. There was a report of an observation of, I'm just relaying the message, and there was a request on behalf of the community member to stress the importance that our town employees are wearing masks when they are out performing their duties in public.
In the last 11 months, that's come up a couple times. I do know that the town administrator has recently scheduled a department head meeting for a couple of weeks, which would be a good time for him to reiterate it. I can certainly pound that message in between now and then, but it's always a good reminder that everyone needs to be setting an example, especially when they're representing the town.
I think it's consistent with what we've been saying every week here at this table, so I'm glad to see that message can be spread. Thank you. That's all I had.
Thank you, Tina. Just a couple things, Mike. On that topic, is there an update on the messaging boards?
So the messaging boards have been delayed because of the issue that you and the board raised to the public a few weeks ago, just before the winter storms. Got to make sure to get your cars off the road, get your basketball hoops. And as we see with the one that's out front, the DPW needs to plow around it. That's great for a very wide roadway, but for some of your 22 to 24-foot variable width roadways, we didn't want to create an instruction for the DPW, so we're holding off until the roads clear up a little bit more.
That would be a perfect place to put that kind of a message, to Tina's point.
Absolutely.
Could I ask you to go back to the screen where you talked about the group home spread? There was a cluster that developed.
Yep, that was slide number 2, Chris.
In a group home, I think I heard you say.
Yes.
I was under the impression that occupants of group homes would have already been vaccinated.
Yes.
So is there a way to determine why that cluster developed? Is it of the patients or clients?
It would only be reported to us as patients. It would not be, or residents. It would not be staff members that were reported to us because they...
So I'm hearing a disconnect. If you've been vaccinated...
Right. So group homes were eligible for vaccination. We have 9 group homes in town. I would have to ask the Board of Health nursing consultant to determine whether or not that nursing home had received the vaccinations, because one of the challenges with group homes is oftentimes they are part of a larger network, and this is one of multiple spots, and so it's incumbent on that organization to make the contact with the federal pharmacy program in order to get the shots for their residents, and so whether or not that specific group home had gotten all of their people both shots at this point, that would be something that they need to explore. But I agree, because it was concerning to see it go from 1 resident at that group home last week to 3 residents at that group home this week, and I believe there are only 4 residents at that group home.
Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
We've asked our Senior Center Director, Linda Marshall, to join us weekly during this portion of our meeting, because we recognize that since the vaccination program was announced to include residents 75 years of age or older, that a fair amount of our citizens have been curious and wanting to know how they can become vaccinated. Over the last several weeks, Linda Marshall and her team down at the Council on Aging has done a lot of work programmatically to help fill some holes with regard to understanding how people get vaccination appointments, transportation options, and other solutions. We're a relatively small town with small resources, but I have to compliment Linda and her staff. They've done a lot in a short period of time, and each week we want Linda to join us so that she can explain to the residents, especially those that use the Council on Aging services, what she's been up to and what they've been doing to help our residents get to the vaccination end game. So good evening, Linda. Thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good evening. I'm fine, thank you.
If you want to just take a few minutes to give us all an update on the COA's activities over the last week or so, and trending ahead, what our seniors can expect from the state and the vaccination program.
Sure, my pleasure. So at this point, we've actually been able to help 85 seniors secure appointments. We had 30 still waiting, 30, 75-year-old plus at the time that the 65s were invited last Thursday. So we have been still unsuccessful in scheduling those 30 folks. We've only had 8 new requests in the 65-year-olds plus, but we're still getting a very significant call volume. Most of the calls are people calling in because they're trying to get appointments and they can't. 3 have stated they called the governor's office, who referred them back to their local senior center. And numbers say one of the websites also says to contact your local senior center. So we're basically either offering our service in terms of, we have volunteers that will help them as appointments become available and explaining the process. We give them the option of the 211 number, or of course, to just keep trying. And again, a lot of education about the volume of requests versus the actual supply. So some of it's the education, a lot of reassurance, but we'll continue. We're also going to send out another robocall this week, now including the 65-plus-year-olds, just letting them know that we are here, that we can help them as appointments become available to schedule or to get transportation to the appointment. I also was informed today, I don't have a dollar amount yet, but we will be receiving some money from Bay Path Elder Services also towards the transportation of seniors to get to appointments.
Thank you, Linda. Are there any questions from the Zoom call for either Chief Cassidy or Linda regarding the coronavirus community update? I don't hear any. So, Linda, we want to thank you again for joining us. We know you guys are busy. Please keep up the great work, and feel free to join us next week again as we move ahead with this program.
All right, thank you.
Chief, we're going to move on to the second item on our agenda, which is the CARES Act programmatic update, please.
Absolutely. So just in terms of our spending to date, the chart here reflects that which has been entered into Munis as of yesterday for the expenses which are being charged against the municipal CARES funds, the $1.3 million which were received last spring. And the next slide is the visual representation of that, just a little bit of a change from last week, but again, in the era of transparency, we want to make sure that everyone knows how it is that the funds are being spent as approved by the board and as part of a larger spending plan that the town has pursued. Then last Friday, next slide, the Division of Local Services at the Department of Revenue issued a 6-page memo outlining some of the changes at the federal level and how they impact a lot of the different federal funds which are available for municipalities to address the coronavirus relief in their individual communities. We had previously shared that there were some changes that had come effective January 21st, such as at that point, vaccination administration costs that were eligible would be eligible for 100% reimbursement as opposed to just 75%. The executive branch of the federal government has been pushing FEMA to extend that 100% reimbursement as opposed to 75% reimbursement for other sorts of eligible expenses. That rule has not made its way out through guidance documents from FEMA, but it is possible that there will be more FEMA-eligible expenses. And we've talked about this before, things like PPE for first responders was eligible for reimbursement, PPE for non-first responders, such as municipal employees in this building, DPW workers, schools, those were not FEMA eligible. In the same way, cleaning and sanitizing public buildings, that was eligible for first responders, but that was not eligible for the library, for the town hall, for the 1750 Washington Street. Some of what they're attempting to do at the federal level is expand what is FEMA eligible for reimbursement and would also include more school reopening costs. Previously, the guidance was cleaning and sanitizing public buildings was not FEMA eligible for schools, except for a one-time cleaning just before they open for school. that in terms of the regular ongoing daily and weekly cleaning that they're doing, or the deep cleaning that was done right after we had our special town meeting in December, those are not eligible costs for under FEMA. So as the guidance comes out from FEMA, DLS will pass that on to the local municipalities. Right now, they have told us that we should submit our quarterly report for the period ending December 31st on or before March 5th, and not make any changes with regards to is it 75% FEMA eligible, it's 100% FEMA eligible. They'll work that all out in the back end when they get more guidance from the federal government. But as additional guidance comes out, I will inform the board, because that does obviously impact our spreadsheet that I share with you each week, where we are tracking the line of potential FEMA eligible reimbursement. That's it that I have for the programmatic end. I don't have any financial requests for you this week.
Questions on that?
Just one. I kind of mentioned it last week, and I'll just kind of ask it again to see if there's any clarity.
Yes.
Do you know how much we might be looking to be spending for the rest of this fiscal year? Just sort of a ballpark. I mean, we were talking last week like 100,000-ish.
Right.
And I'm just wondering if it's around there still.
If the board were to continue the same spending initiatives that they have currently voted through the end of March, things like cleaning, sanitizing of public buildings,
like meal delivery, I think.
meal delivery,
Did we do that for the rest of the year?
I believe you did that through the end of the fiscal year.
Okay.
But things like the surveillance for public health for the nursing consultant. Did you do crossing guard only through March? Yeah, you only did crossing guard through March. Yeah. So those if you kept with that same philosophy of buckets in which you wanted to spend, I would say that 100,000 would be a reasonable projection.
Okay.
And then again, if there were one-offs, and we discussed this, I expect that at some point, Youth and Family Service may be coming back to us with another request for rental mortgage relief.
Okay.
And again, that was something that was covered in the DLS memo, and they talked about it's very important to not have basically two different federal programs paying the same expenses. So if someone was eligible for rental mortgage relief in one program, then they wouldn't be eligible through another program, and you just need to be really careful. And, to her credit, Jackie Weiner from Youth and Family Services, when they created the program, we modeled it off of a couple other communities out there, and we made sure that we weren't going to supplant other funding sources by offering this rental mortgage relief through the municipal cares fund that the town had access to. So we've been very careful there. But again, it was something that they brought up, that it may be something that they've seen in one of the other 351 cities and towns.
Yeah, that's the thing about having all these opportunities for experiments to see what works and what doesn't in all sorts of different places. So, yeah, I mean, I'm just looking to make sure, do we have enough money in here, and we want to make sure that we do spread it out as much as possible to make sure that we can keep these services.
And you may have noticed that on my update, that number has reduced this week from last week, because you'll notice on a couple of them it indicates what has already posted. So if you had approved $30,000 and $17,000 of that has posted, I included the note that it was posted, and then I carried in the column for projected expenses between now and the end of March, what was the unexpended balance.
Yeah, and that's why I'm asking, is just to make sure that we're still basically in the same position that we are. I mean, maybe just having like a note about it somewhere that just says, we've spent this much to March, we project.
Right.
If we continue at current pace, we'll probably spend, $100,000 for the rest of fiscal year 20.
Yeah, and again, I didn't want to double count. I didn't want to show that you had obligated through a vote of something through March. And then if it's already posted in Munis and the upper, things like the surveillance through Board of Health, those, I wanted to make sure that they were properly reflected.
Understood. No, and it makes perfect sense. That's why. Okay. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Tina.
Yeah, so just, you addressed just about everything I was gonna ask. I just wanted to clarify, one more piece out of that DLS memo of Friday.
Yes.
In terms of rental and mortgage assistance, there are two things I think are worth pointing out. There are cautionary statements about developing, implementing, and enforcing policies to ensure compliance. To your point, I think is well covered through the application process. I think that legwork was done.
Yes.
With another, request, I look forward to receiving that request, but with another request, is that something that we could have just sort of reviewed and refreshed and check the boxes up against this DLS report?
Sure. If the Youth Advisory Board votes to advance a request to your board, absolutely, Travis or I could make sure to review the application that has been used in previous rounds to ensure that the DLS intent is covered 100%.
I don't think there'll be any issue, but it seems...
I don't either, based on the due diligence that all of the parties did ahead of time.
And also, this covers rental, assistance. I pulled up Jackie's report. There was mortgage assistance provided through the program before, and that does not appear to be impacted by this DLS advisory statement.
Correct. And again, there are other programs that are out there independent
Right.
of what the town was offering through Youth and Family Services. There were state programs that, Jackie has that in her, basically, binder of options, so that when someone comes and is seeking assistance, she can help direct them to the most appropriate resource, which is great.
Well, I'm glad that conversation is ongoing, and look forward, like I said, to feedback from the Family Advisory Board. That's all.
Thank you, Tina. Mike, the only thing I wanted to point out was that, I would think that in the next week or two, we'll hear out of Washington, some movement on the, pending next stimulus. There's been a lot of chatter about it. I have in front of me some of the elements that are planned from, Washington on this package. It hasn't been passed yet, but there is a component being considered for state, local, and tribal government relief, which was not present in the last stimulus, bill that came out. So I'm sure when it gets released, we'll hear from you specifically on what we can expect as a local unit of government should federal money flow, again, to states and local governments. But I think folks at home should be comforted to know that the balance of available funds in our CARES Act, currently appears sufficient, given the, items before us. We have covered most of the things that we think are eligible and still have a relatively decent balance of funds to get us where we need to go.
Yes.
Additional state aid will, of course, help, especially on the school side, but for now, we're in good stead. Any questions from those on the Zoom call relative to the CARES Act programmatic update? Hearing none. Thank you, Chief. We will move on to warrants. That's Carol.
Yes, I have, we have one warrant here, so I will make a motion to approve the warrants for $1,302,465.98. Of that, $129,255.58 is town payroll.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Thank you, Ben. Move on to the public comment. Sarah?
I do not have anything this evening.
This time?
I have no public comment, thank you.
I just have two items. First, I wanted to let folks know that in the coming days, the town of Holliston will have a private event to recognize Holliston's oldest veteran. That will be Charles Nickerson. He's a World War II veteran who served very honorably and bravely, and he will be recognized by the town in the coming days. It's an honor to be able to help represent the town during these moments when we reflect on people who have served, especially those who have led a full life in the absence of some of their fallen comrades. I always look forward to these events, and I will be humbled to be in his presence. We'll report back on how that went after the event. The next item I just wanted to update people on is related to the Governance Committee. This committee, as some folks know, has been quite busy reviewing our town government, the way we function. They've recently released a set of draft bylaw articles for consideration this coming spring. They are meeting with various groups of stakeholders in town government, so we invite everyone watching to tune in and find their meetings upcoming. Tomorrow evening with the Finance Committee at 7 p.m. February 25th, they'll be meeting with finance officers from the town. Thursday, March 4th, they'll be meeting with the school committee, which I think will be broadcast. They'll be before us on the 8th of March, circling back with some of the things that they've learned. Looking ahead, they don't have dates yet, but they are looking for additional public hearings with the general public sometime towards the middle to end of March before any articles for consideration by this board will be considered again in late March. So their efforts have been appreciated. A lot of hard work being put into their product, and we want folks to understand they're trying to hit on all the related offices and committees for input. So that is all I have for public comment. Is there anybody assembled on the Zoom call this evening who has anything to add for public comment? Hearing none. We will now move on to the Blair Square Farmers Market discussion. I believe Bobby Blair is going to join us for that.
Do listen person.
Morning, Bob.
Chief.
Good evening, Bob.
Good evening.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think Travis has most of it. Yes.
So, Bob, before you start, you came before us about a month ago and introduced a concept for a farmers market at Blair Square this summer.
Correct.
I know you did some homework before you came in to see us, and I think you got a very strong board interest for your project, but had some work to do, and you've been busy, I've been told, working with a lot of different stakeholders, and you're here to talk about how it all went down.
What we're at now, Travis is very, very helpful. We've kind of gone with the Friends of the Community Farm to help out on this. Travis had suggested a once-a-week market, but I think like a farmer. So if you've got a crop of blueberries, strawberries, they only come in a certain amount of time. And if we only had the market once a month, you're bringing your crop down there one time if you're lucky. Blueberries come the beginning of June. It might go to the middle of July. Same thing with strawberries. In my case, it's not to the end of the season. So, and most markets all are every week. We came up with a business plan there. It was revised, and I think you'll find on page 5, I had asked Matt to revise it, but on that highlighted part there, he had the funds going back to the vendors, which would have been nice, but the idea is to help out the community farm.
You ready for questions, or do you have more to present?
You've got another packet there. You had asked about safety and traffic, and thankfully, Lieutenant Larini came up with all the answers there. Hopefully. He's going to provide auxiliary police, especially when the vendors come. We're going to have a portion go up the trail and out on the front street. Others, probably only 3 or 4, come on Railroad Street and unload. So the officer would be there at the time just for safety's sake. And then when we break down, we do it the opposite way. There's also
We have that one
a-
up on the screen, if you wanna show any of the pictures. I think Lieutenant Lorini also put in some pictures if you'd like to go through them, or, there's the other image as well that Chris has ready to queue up.
he's come up with, and this is a rough figure of, 194 parking spaces. And he came up with one, well, I had thought of it, behind Tabletop Pizza, the 16 parking spaces there. On Winter in front, 24 municipal parking lots where I'll instruct vendors to go after they've unloaded and park there. And then, at the end of the day, go down, pick up the vehicle and bring back up. That way it leaves, parking right on, front, Winthrop Street there. And we've got the use of the Adams Middle School, and we'll have signage to direct people across the street, next to, Next Generation Martial Arts. And there's I guess it's a right-of-way there. Actually, the town owns it, I believe, so people can walk up the trail to the market.
Great. Anything else, Paul? Anything else?
That's it. I kind of jumped the gun because, you weren't here last week, and I put in for a, portable wash station. It's for a grant, but the deadline is tomorrow morning, so I jumped the gun and, sent in for it. I know that I'll have to go to the Board of Health and see what kind of rules and regulations they have. As part of the market, we have our rules and regulations anyway, so we'll have to send them, anybody with, food that's, processed, will have to go through the Board of Health. I know, 10 or 12 years ago, we kind of skated by that if you made cookies or brownies, that was okay. I don't know if that's okay anymore. And also, thanks to Mr. Wideneck, did up a plot plan, with the tent sited there. And as you can see, up to the, cut through there, we're able to, fit 22 tents. Now, them tents that are in there are 10 by 10, which is pretty standard for, a farmer's market. There will be guaranteed, some farmers that want a 10 by 20. So, like I say, that's tentative. We'll have to, the idea there was to see how many would fit in there. I know that there's a veteran site planned up just past the cutout there. And I'm trying to stay away from going too far up, only because when, the vendors come in from Central Street, fine, they can go out to cutoff there. But once they're past that, now they're backing up. Now you got a log jam if people are waiting, so. And that's why we, on this side, on Railroad Street, we'll have the vendors, unload, and that will hopefully, keep it pretty clear of the trail itself.
All set? Ready for some questions?
No, I'm all set. I'm ready for spring.
Ben, any questions?
Yeah, a couple of questions.
Sure.
So, first, I participate with the Blair Square Committee, and we're talking about sort of doing a little bit of redevelopment of this particular area, have you had any conversations with them about, the impact? I mean, you know, it could be just Kevin Conley, who's the chair. I was just wondering if you
I
had...
did speak to them. They didn't think they were gonna do anything this year. I didn't wanna start it this year if it was gonna be a total renovation.
Right.
What Kevin said, it may be piecemeal. I says, I can work around that.
Okay.
I just didn't want everybody to be in the way with things here and there.
Sure.
I think, Tina, you had a question on it about trash barrels, and
I think
We talked about trash.
yeah.
okay. I was gonna bring some, and we're gonna set up, a couple of places for bottles and cans.
Okay.
And take them over to, the Boy Scouts
Right.
there.
Okay.
That'll keep the sustainability, director happy.
Okay. A couple other things. Have we done any, like, we've kind of talked about it loosely last time, but I was just wondering if we kind of went a little further about any cost analysis, like just to sort of understand, like, what potential costs might be out there. And one of the things that I noticed about, you know, that the financial management that you're putting in front of us is that it's, you know, we want to make sure that it's reasonable by industry rates, which I think makes sense, but I also want to make sure that we're keeping costs in consideration to make sure that the fees, they might be reasonable by industry rates, but to make sure that we're actually able to pay for expenses in that sense. So just to sort of make sure that we're in line in that space. And then on the other side of it too, that we're not collecting an enormous amount of money that, you know, if it's too much or something.
I don't think, you'll be collecting an enormous amount of money.
Sure. Okay.
I had figured here on, 20 vendors, which is reasonable.
Okay.
If I go over 20, I'm going past that cutoff, the pathway going across.
Yep.
Okay? Plus you're adding more vehicles now. The standard price for a vendor is $25.
Mm-hmm.
If someone's taking an 8x10 or someone is, signing up for the entire season, it goes, by a 10x20, we're talking $40, so you give them a break there. So, with 20 vendors, 5, I'm taking a guess at the larger tents would come at $200. 15, 10x10s is $375, comes to $575.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not guaranteed at this point that there'll be 20 vendors. I mean, I have to put it out there and see what happens, that's all. At 15 vendors, 3 10x20s is $120, and 10 at 25 is $250. We're talking about $370.
Okay.
So, you know, you don't go and sell raffle tickets to make extra money. I mean,
Sure.
it is what it is.
Right. Okay. Well, I just want to make sure that we're recouping any costs, like, you know, if it's, having an officer directing traffic or, you know, whatever those kinds of things could be, like, you know, if they have to rent a porta potty or something like that.
It was Peter Barberi's thing. His thoughts were we wouldn't need porta potties. If you're talking about porta potties, you're probably talking, and P.J. Kiltilly had sent me a quote from a company, thing they were having at the farm. We're talking $225.
Mm-hmm.
Someone says, well, are you going to leave it there? And I says, well, hold on. We're into, okay, do we need 2 now? 1 for men, 1 for women,
Sure.
1 for handicapped now?
Right, then
We wouldn't be taking in that
fair.
much money.
That's fair.
You know,
Okay.
and Peter's reasoning was, we're not holding a 3 or 4 hour event. if you're coming to the market, you're coming to shop 15, 20 minutes, and that's it. I understand there'll be people on the trail as well, but
Right.
there's no bathrooms there now.
Right. Okay. All right. That's good to hear that you've done some of that analysis. My last question is, so there is some green space in this area. There's some grass and things like that. Is there going to be? Would there be like an environmental impact from this particular kind of event? Like we would see, like kind of some.
I know at Natick, at the very end of the season, they move onto the street because people wear down the grass.
Right.
The last 2 years, I've been fortunate that Mr. Dubin has brought 3 loads of horse manure down there, and I had the Downtown Marigold project spread it around. The soil down there is terrible. The 3 flower beds that I have down there, I put potting soil in there, that kind of thing.
Okay. So there would be an impact, and we would do.
Well, I could show you pictures.
Okay.
It depends upon the year. And one year, the grass was like a golf course, and the next year, it just dried out and it was all brown. So.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I think that's all I have at this point for questions.
All right.
Thank you, sir.
Tina?
Yeah, I have a couple. So, let's see. Well, let me start with, is there an opportunity for the farmer's market in time, depending on the success, is there an opportunity for this farmer's market to expand into the fall, into the winter, into the spring? That's not addressed in any of sort of the mission or the vision of this, but I'm just curious to know what you think, whether or not this could grow to be year-round.
Anything's possible.
Are there examples in other communities where they are year-round?
Natick has an indoor. I think Medway has an indoor.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I didn't bring along, and Mr. Wideneck had sent me, because they have the counters on the Exchange Street Bridge.
Yeah, I'm looking at that right now.
And he can, I was amazed that he was able to whittle it right down to the hour between 9 and 1 o'clock.
Yeah.
And I think if you look on you'll see around August 3rd.
August 30th.
Okay, but August
Oh, okay.
3rd was like the lowest count
Okay.
in them 4 hours, and I think somewhere around September 1st or 2nd
Yeah.
was the highest count of 450 people going through there. You have to divide them by 2, because if you figure on people going up and coming back, so, but 450 people in 4 hours
Right.
is huge, and that's a selling point
I was gonna
that
ask
I
you
have
that.
for the vendors.
Great.
Hey, you've got instant customers here.
And you have that data available to you to pull it together to sell, to advertise that to the vendors. You have access to that information?
I do.
Good, okay. So then if we come back to the map, and Lieutenant Larini's safety plan or his plan for the farmer's market and parking and so on, Railroad Street there, you've got green spaces marked for drop-off. It's not just drop-off, though, it's also loading at the end of the day.
Right.
Okay, so what's the time period that you're talking about where essentially Railroad Street is narrowed to a one-way for those Sundays?
Well, we haven't got it set up because I don't know who's coming yet. And when I find out, and if they're coming for the season, they'll have the same spot. So then I can tell them, okay, how about a 20-minute window of opportunity? And have them all on same type thing so that we're not blocking that traffic there.
Okay. All right, because I'm curious, that if the Blair Square Committee would look to Railroad as a permanent one-way. I'm just gonna throw that out there. It seems like at least a certain number of Sundays during the year, it's gonna certainly be turned into one for the purposes of loading and unloading, for the farmer's market. So I'm just gonna put that idea out there, let it float for a little bit. Then coming to the business plan, So the management board is 4 individuals. Do you
Right.
have people tapped for those roles at this point in time?
The Friends of the Community Farm is gonna have a re-election, or their offices change in March.
Okay,
So at that point, I'll forward to you who's on that. I've got a list of 15 people that want to help out at the market,
okay.
so they can be part of that.
So you see this coming from the board, president, treasurer, secretary, director are coming from the community farm, Friends of,
Friends of,
as well as from the community at large?
right,
And you don't anticipate a problem filling those 4 roles?
no,
Okay, because it's clear here that, the farmer's market cannot be established without a management board, so I was just wondering
right.
what process had
They
been
would
made.
be the
Okay.
management board.
Okay. And then I like that the business plan did not predetermine Blair Square to be the only location. I like that the business plan identifies other public spaces
We,
for potential,
right, well,
consideration.
it was suggested for the high school, and the other schools, but once you have school back in session, well, even during the summertime now, you have, sports events, at those
Right.
facilities. So now you're vying for parking spaces, at those places.
Okay. The 501c3 has been identified to be the Friends of the Community Farm?
Right.
Okay, because it's left open there. All right, and then that is, and so the parking spaces that you've identified, the parking lots that you've identified in the plan here, that's capable of holding 194 cars?
Yeah,
Okay.
that's rude. I counted some of them off the map, so.
Yeah, okay. I think that's it for now. Thank you.
Mhm.
Let me see that. The envelope. The envelope. That's the plan for the Holliston Community Farm is on the back of an envelope. Gotta love you, Bobby. First, I want to say thank you. Over the years, you've been recognized for a lot of things you've done for our community. You're a gem, and I want to recognize that because you are constantly in motion, thinking of ways to enrich our community, and I think you've hit another home run here. I think people are going to love the idea of a farmer's
I
market.
think the people on the rail trail have hit the home run. I'm amazed anytime I'm down there and I just look and it's like, where do all these people come from? This one was just kind of a natural thing to fall in there.
Well, you've done your homework, and to my satisfaction, you've addressed almost everything. I just have a couple of questions for you. The number of parking spaces against the potential foot traffic, I think is something we're going to have a close look at. It would be a good problem to have a lot of people there and not enough parking, but long term, after this summer, I think we'll have to assess whether or not this is the right mix, just based on the number of parking spaces that are available. According to the census here, on certain days, you could have over 400 people walking through Blair Square.
Oh, yeah.
Without a farmer's market. So now if you add the incentive and cars, it's going to have to be something to keep an eye on.
I agree.
But again, it'd be a good problem to have because business will be good. Could you again tell us what the schedule is for this summer? What are you proposing? It starts on Father's Day, right?
Which is the first day of summer, June 20th.
Yeah.
To the second Sunday in October, and I don't know what that date is.
And then
but
every Sunday?
every Sunday.
What would the hours be, Bob?
9 to 1. And that, I only picked that day, because I looked at all the other farmers markets. The only other one that day is Hopkinton, which is in the afternoon.
Right.
So you're not vying, and the big thing is with farmers markets is getting the vendors to come.
Mm-hmm.
And vendors can't be 4 or 5 places at once.
Right.
So,
the plan that Bob Wydeck, I see Bob on the call this evening, how are you, Bob, drew up shows a total capacity of 30. But again, to reiterate, you're going to try to keep the number closer to 20 to start with anyways, to manage a scale.
I mean, it'd be nice to have 40 and go right down the trail, but
yeah.
I think
proof of concept.
You're right, and I agree that we're gonna have problems with parking. And people, you can tell them a million times, okay, it's parking at the Adams Middle School.
Right.
They're gonna find the easiest place to park, and, I'm sure I'll hear some complaints.
Right.
I know CVS has a sign up there. I'll forewarn John McCarthy, maybe he'd like to put a sign up if he doesn't already, parking for patrons only.
Now, the last question I have might be more for you, Travis, but, each of the vendors that, the market signs up, will they sign a license agreement? Or do they have any specific agreement that has to be endorsed to do what they're doing?
The town would be having a license agreement with one entity, through this business
group.
Right. So that would be the license agreement with one group.
So the question now goes to you, will each of the farmers have an agreement with you guys?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
What will that agreement include?
I think I gave, no, I gave it to you a month ago.
Okay.
And it's predicated on Hopkinton's, which is, I think they copied it from Ashland, and, the only thing that we were gonna change was for the loading and unloading, time, the date, that type of thing.
Is that something council should look at?
Yeah, we can absolutely take a look at it. I think that
Dotted line.
the license that we need to come up with, again, we can, after this conversation, if the board votes in favor of this, tell them when we get that to us, I'll have you review it, and then I can also have him review anything else.
So, thanks, Travis. One other item, I'm gonna ask Chief Cassidy to weigh in on it. We could not have this market today under the pandemic guidelines that we're operating under. Mike, if you could, shed some light on this. This is all presuming some level of the executive order that caps a restriction on public assembly for farmers markets is currently restricted. Is that correct?
That is correct. Outside gatherings are limited to 25 persons at this time, and the guidance from the executive office specifically called out outdoor festivals, and those are not permitted during the current phase that we're in.
While people may see something like this in other communities, doesn't make it. We're just trying to point out that we're hoping for the right days ahead in the next several months to achieve what you're trying to do. In the event that we're not, we see a setback, whatever, those are circumstances nobody's hoping for today, and we're planning around, okay? Good, sorry.
But this past summer, there was specific guidance to farmers markets on how to run them during the pandemic. I remember reading about that, so I would anticipate hopefully that they'd offer that again for this summer.
They could.
Yeah.
The reopening guidance was generated later in the summer, so
Okay.
some things have changed a lot.
Okay, all right.
I know Natick had social distancing, and I went over there 5 times.
Hopkins did too.
From the end of August into September.
Let me ask if anybody on the Zoom has any questions, Bob, regarding the farmers market proposal. Anybody? Bob Wideneck, good evening. How are you?
Good evening. Robert Wideneck, 40 Hemlock Drive, and Chair of the Holliston Trails Committee. I just wanted to point out that we did have a discussion about the farmers market at our last meeting in February, where we discussed the whole concept, and it was met very warmly by the whole committee. And so, they think it's a great idea, and thank Bobby for all he does. And I think it'll work out well for the trail users as well as people in town.
Thanks, Bob. Any other comments from folks on the Zoom call? All right, Travis, do you desire a vote by the board this evening on this concept?
I would, if you are in support of this, then I would take a vote to direct me to get the license in place through Jay Talent.
I'd like to entertain a motion to support the Holliston Farmers Market plan as proposed by Mr. Blair and discussed this evening.
I'll make that motion.
And I will second it.
Any discussion on that? All those in favor say aye.
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 Bobby, thank you again for everything, and nice job.
Now I head to the Board of Health.
Well, so just.
Travis was the help, and I said I felt like going back and forth with the emails that I was a negotiator at the Brexit EU conference, I'm going, oh, God, how's he do it every day?
You mean work with us? That's the problem. So when you go to the Board of Health, just make sure you nail the brownie question.
Yeah, that's right.
We need a
Is that
vendor to
your
sell
forte,
brownies. You know what, I'm not
brownie?
gonna admit that, but just make sure the brownies are taken care of.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
Very good.
Thanks, Frank.
okay.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you, Bobby.
Move on our agenda for comments from the town administrator.
Okay, thanks.
Mr. Ahern.
Yes. All right. Just transition here. Okay. So, a couple things I just wanted to bring to people's attention before we transition to the budget. I see Sean with us. So, March 8th, it's chalking out to be a busy meeting for the Select Board. As you mentioned, the Governance Committee will be with the Select Board, but we will start off that evening with a legislative update from Senator Spilka and Rep. Dykema. I have let the chairs of the School Committee and Finance Committee know about that, and I will try to coordinate, especially if there are any questions that we know, so we can give Senator Spilka and Rep. Dykema a heads up and have them prepared to answer those. So we will start the evening at 7 o'clock with them, and then go to the Governance Committee at 8 o'clock. A couple of things. We have 2 open seats currently on the EDC, and so I will be looking for opportunities for the board to appoint to fill that committee. There's quite a few things going on with the EDC at the moment. Most recently, the Economic Development Fund was approved through the legislature. Additionally, there's some grant opportunities that my office has been working on that will work with the Select Board and also the EDC and some other groups. So it's an exciting time for the EDC, and so I think if we can get people to fill those seats, that would be great. And I will continue to try to fill that. The Select Board is the appointing authority of the EDC. Lastly, and this is sort of a pivot for Thursday evening, we will have the Select Board. We've added a couple of meetings to help us get through the budget season in addition to your busy schedule. And so this Thursday is one of our add-on meetings, and that will be for the fire, ambulance, and emergency management budgets, any budgets that we need to review that we've previously approved. So that'll be this Thursday evening at 7 o'clock. We will be downstairs on that evening. We will not be broadcast live on HCAT, so if you'd like to participate in that budget meeting, you must be with us on Zoom. The meeting will be rebroadcast the next day if you would like to watch on HCAT. So that's Thursday, February 25th, Select Board meeting. We will be in the downstairs conference room, and to be there live, you need to be on Zoom. The reason we'll be downstairs is that the Planning Board has another 555 Hopping Brook meeting this Thursday, 7 p.m. as well, which will be broadcast live on HCAT. Let me just make sure I read it correctly. You can see all this information through our webpage, which has quite a bit of materials that they'll be going through. So that will be live on HCAT, Comcast 11, Verizon 34. And so, as I think there's quite a few people who are following along with that particular project proposal that is being reviewed by the Planning Board, so that will also be Thursday night. And you can view all that information through our website, which includes an updated site plan, peer review of a sound study, peer review of a traffic study, and some other information, all through the Town of Holliston's website. That's all I have.
Travis, I'm sorry, could you just restate how many spots are available for the Economic Development Committee?
2 at the moment. 1 runs through the end of this fiscal year, if somebody wants to just kick the tires and try it out for a very short amount of time.
Yep.
We also have a seat that runs through 6/30/23. And so, 2 seats, and obviously anybody who took the seat that only ran through the end of the fiscal year would be looking for it in the long term. But yeah, we have 2 seats available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Travis. Any questions from the Town Administrator? Anybody in the Zoom have any questions? Town Administrator's update. Hearing none, let us move on to the FY22 budget review. You want to start with a revenue review, or do you want to go right into the DPW piece, Travis?
No, I'll just
Feel here and let us know how you want to proceed.
Yeah, let me just do a high level before we get to Sean, who looks like he's with us. So we did receive, I believe it was last week, the schools presented their level service budget plus a superintendent level budget. So I factored all of that information into the sort of big picture that I give you on a weekly basis. Additionally, the Keefe Tech budget came out. I did have a conversation with the finance director of Keefe Tech, And so I think there's a few scenarios that we'll see play out over the next few weeks. One is if the Keep Tech votes to use ESSER funding to reduce assessments, and one is not. Either way, I would see the number that I built in here for an assumption for you to view as the highest. It will only go down, right, as we sort of go through this budget process. Additionally, the West Suburban Health Group took a vote this morning on their rates for FY22. We're still working through with the PEC an agreement through the town and them and that group moving forward, but Mary Bosquet, now with the information that was released from West Suburban Health Group this morning, can begin to put together the budget that you'll see next Monday, which is the benefits budget. And once we can factor that in, we'll have a full view of all budget requests, essentially. And so that's kind of where we are on the revenue side. Again, we're still assuming flat state aid. That's it's certainly better than when we started, where we were there was some trepidation. But at the same time, flat state aid means that there isn't a lot of growth from that particular revenue source. And so we will continue to look for any other opportunities, but at this point, I have no changes in our revenue assumptions.
Thank you.
Questions on that, or we want to start in with DPW?
Starting with DPW.
Okay. So if you could pull up the highway budget, Chris, we have Sean with us.
Hello.
Good evening, Sean.
Hi, Sean.
Hi, how are you?
Very good.
Okay. All right, I didn't have an opportunity to meet with my liaison, but I did review the budget with the town administrator. In the personal services, the significant change we had there was the temporary labor. We added that back in. We just could use the help over the summertime. We kept the police details at level, but you can see there's an increase over that was due to the culvert. We had to have 24-hour details for a couple of days. So that's why that was over expended for this year. But hopefully we don't have anything like that next year, but we do have money in there. The largest impact is down in the purchase services with the up branch. We've increased that to 140,000 to accommodate some other things for the trees. And then we had a small increase in uniforms, and we increased the sign budget again. It's just not feasible or realistic to keep it down at about $1,000. So we brought that back up to 3,500. That's really it with the highway budget. Any questions or any specifics?
I'll just point out one thing that Sean pointed out on uniforms. That's directly related to the one-year collective bargaining agreement that was passed this fiscal year. That is essentially the annualized impact of that one. And obviously, as we've discussed with all of our budgets, we currently have no assumption in here for non-union COLA. That will be addressed soon. And so this is obviously not impacting that. It's assuming level rates at this point, and we will revisit it soon.
Any questions, Ben?
Just a kind of a question, but just like we want to bring up signs here. We've talked about this in the past, but that's the amount that you have in signs is basically to repair broken signs, in effect, right? Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, maybe purchase a couple stop signs here and there, but it's separate from the traffic advisory committee budget for signs. Okay.
All right. I've seen this budget many times, so I'm pretty familiar with it, even we hadn't talked recently. So I appreciate it. Thank you, Sean, for doing this, and call me if you need me.
Okay.
I'm good.
Thanks, Ben. Tina.
Yeah, I think he means call him for like help snow plowing as well.
Yes.
I don't have that kind of license.
Sean, I'm just going to circle back around on 55,390, the signs line.
Okay.
So that's, excuse me, that 3,500, you just stated that's for the occasional stop sign, that's for fixing broken signs. That is intended to be in addition to the 4,500 that was part of that TAC article at town meeting.
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to use them differently. The recommendations that we get through the TAC, if we can use that sign budget, say for if there's specific LED, something that would be beyond the scope of, say, just installation or an update of a traffic sign. I mean, a stop sign. And that would be my vision of how it worked.
Right. And the TAC article was not a FY21 specific or FY22 specific amount. So in this case, the 3,500 is just for sign replacements within fiscal year 22, whereas tax is,
That's correct.
that fund is that money's available over a longer period of time. Am I right
That's
on
also correct.
Okay. All right. I just want to be clear that then there are two different sources of funding for signs. But really, it's a minor piece of your overall budget and no other questions. So thank you.
Okay.
I have no questions, Sean. You've met guideline by and large, and we perfectly understand what's going on here. So with that, I will entertain a motion to approve the proposed FY22 DPW Highway Department budget of $1,482,607.
So moved.
Second that?
All those in favor say aye.
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 That carries. Sean, let's move on to water.
Okay, I just said, we had a capital request to Highway 2. Did you want me to touch upon that, or is that another discussion?
Could you repeat that, Sean? You broke up there.
I had a capital request for the Highway Department. I don't know if you want to touch upon that, or if, is that a separate discussion another time?
We'll come back to that in the warrant discussion, but I think, just so people are aware, the capital outlay within this highway budget is related to road maintenance. That would be anything above and beyond Chapter 90, and this is what we do on an annual basis to make sure we're keeping up. Capital outlay otherwise is generally seen in a separate capital article, and so what Sean is referring to is sort of the fleet piece that is absolutely necessary in May as opposed to waiting until October. So if you wanted to get into that now, otherwise we can discuss it in the future. It's up to you.
Yeah.
Sean, take a pass at it. Just let us know what we can expect to see down the road for cost.
Yeah. Okay. Real quickly, the highway superintendent is working on a quote to replacement of the street sweeper. It's replacement of the 2009 sweeper that we have in service now. The quote is for somewhere around 200,000, but we're trying to refine that, and we have a trade-in. So it's in the ballpark of 200,000. So it's a significant capital request.
Is it in the capital plan?
It is.
It is. I would assume it is.
Good news.
Yeah.
Okay, Tina, you have a question?
Well, I'll ask it. So you're replacing a 2009 street sweeper?
Yes.
Was it fully operational last year?
Yes and no. No, we've had major difficulties with it over the last 2 to 3 years. It's actually if we'll call it, for lack of a better word, in the shop now in Connecticut for repair. So it's presenting us with significant issues, and it's time to replace it with a better product or a better piece of equipment.
Okay, that sounds like good news too. Okay.
Anything else on the capital list, Sean?
No, sir.
Let's move to water.
Sure. So, and I'll let, if Sean's got anything, I think, so there is no change to the bottom line. You've voted this budget. Sean and I sat down and looked at it, just a couple things. Just wanted to tie a couple of the lines to the way that things are getting reflected on Munis. So if you can scroll down a little bit, Chris, for example, the field expenses line in the budget, everything was essentially flat in the budget you approved. The bottom line, again, has not changed from what you approved. We're just trying to match where things are getting charged historically within the budget more accurately. So, for example, I'm just trying to look, professional services, 53000 goes up 31,000. It's really offset essentially by field expenses down below going down to match history. At the end of the day, it's about where things are getting reflected and just capturing that in the budget. And again, it does not impact the bottom line, but you had voted this budget as a bottom line. I just wanted, before I pass this to the Finance Committee, for you to have a look at it before it goes in this version. Anything else, Sean?
No, I just appreciate the additional review of the town administrator.
Any questions, Ben?
No.
Tina, any questions?
No.
So Ben, Travis, we've already taken a vote on this. Do you require another one, or are you good to go with this one?
Well, I suppose the bottom line has not changed, so if you're comfortable, I think I'm fine with that.
Good, we'll move on.
All right.
Motor vehicle fuels.
And I will cover motor vehicle fuels. So let me just transition here. A few things I would point out. All of the information is tracked through the highway department. and so there is the fuel master transaction, listing is what gets on a monthly basis, is processed and, is what is used to charge to each different account. One thing I would point out is that there are 3 areas that use fuel within town that cover those expenses separately, because they're separate funding sources. One is the COA, and their relationship with the MWRTA. The other is the schools, and lastly is the Water Enterprise Fund, and that is because the Water Enterprise Fund is self-supporting. Otherwise, fuel use hits this particular budget line. The decrease here, again, what I'm trying to capture is the fact that we have been historically under budget, based on some analysis of the past few years. I think the average is in the low to mid $90,000 range, and so factoring in 15% fluctuation on prices, I think 105 is a number that I would be comfortable with going into FY22. To be ultra conservative, we could certainly keep it flat at $115,000, but I think $105,000 is the right number based on the usage and the fact that we have seen some increasing rates going into the next fiscal year, so I think we need to be prepared for that.
Any questions on that, Pat?
Nope.
Tina?
None.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the motor vehicle fuels budget for fiscal year 2022 at $105,000 even.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries.
All right, thank you, Sean.
Sean, thanks so much. Have a great night.
Thank you, John, for your time.
Thank you. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Night, John.
Take care.
Review previously approved budgets at this point. Is that necessary?
So the one thing I would mention, and I brought it up last week in your absence, and we can certainly do it tonight or at a future meeting, would simply be I will be presenting the facilities management budget to the Finance Committee tomorrow in relation to the conversation we've already had about disbanding public buildings budget, the facilities management budget, the IT and all that. One of the components of the facilities management budget that I think the chair had mentioned when we reviewed it at the time was that we are assuming within the custodial services line something that we are currently charging to CARES in the amount of about $30,000 we have factored into what you've approved for the FY22 request. It is, it is still a possibility. It's really a decision that we can all make as a group. That would be, do we want to factor in the cost of custodial services into FY22 that can be charged to CARES if there's still a balance going into the fiscal year? Would certainly be appropriate to do so. Especially as that it is a cost that, as response to COVID changes over time, may no longer be a need beyond our access to CARES funding, is another way to sort of look at it. So there's a conversation that I think we had it previously that I just wanted to bring up again as I'll present that budget tomorrow night.
No, I appreciate it, and I tend to think that that's a smart way to do it. We are beset by obviously a balance sheet that we've got to pull together, and 30,000 is a meaningful number. And we do have some favorability under CARES. It's an appropriate expense, so I would recommend moving it over there.
Okay.
Any thoughts on that?
You said you'd recommend moving it to CARES and out of the budget?
Yeah.
I'd rather keep it in the budget personally, just to make sure that we're aware of it, and then we just have sort of like an asterisk, if you will, just to sort of indicate that it's this could be potentially covered by CARES, just to sort of cover us in both directions, and then as we get closer to having a little bit of clarity on what CARES is going to look like, we can move it out. I'd just be reluctant to move it this early. It might be later in the process. Personally, that's my personal opinion.
Any thoughts, Ms. Tina?
I would like to go with removing it and putting it under CARES, and only because it's consistent with how we have approached our CARES spending to date. If the needs before us, we've addressed the need related to the pandemic. That's how this works in my mind, is that we're presented with a need for FY22 that's related to the pandemic, and we have CARES money available. So I would approach it in the same way we've approached every other decision. I don't know if it's worth, I wonder if it's worth tomorrow night where this budget is raised with the Finance Committee to ask them the risk in their mind. So how would they handle it were the pandemic to continue to rage and we see a continued need beyond December 31st of 2021? and get their feedback on what would happen for the remainder of the fiscal year. I'm not sure if that addresses a concern you might have, Ben, or anybody else for that matter, but I like being consistent in the approach. And to that end, the facilities budget is not the only one. It was the Council on Aging as well, had some money.
We put $8,400 or $8,700. Now, again, that I would separate those two specific issues, right? The COA is related to us increasing telecapacity, that I'm not sure would be only tied to, right, if COVID were no longer in our wheelhouse, would we still want that to be part of their operations moving forward, or will we immediately cut off that service as opposed to, right, 2 times a day daily cleanings of high-touch services most likely would fall off?
I guess I thought that there was a meals piece to their budget.
I think yeah. But I think that's being charged to CARES. I'm not sure that we put it in their budget. I'd have to look back.
Can I ask a question that I think has to be put out there? It goes to you, Chief Cassidy, also. The CARES Act money is made available to us legally through the end of calendar year 2021, right?
Yes.
Now, does the governor's emergency orders associated with the COVID pandemic, if he were to withdraw those on July 1st, for example, and say we're going to try to return or start to retreat from some of these executive orders, and thus, you don't have to do high-touch cleaning anymore, and those things start to creep in. How does that work? If we have the money to execute something, and do we get to still do the high-touch cleaning until the money runs out?
As long as it is consistent with the intent of the federal legislation, which was to address the health emergency. So if we feel that it is in the best interest of our employees and those who visit our buildings to continue to have that aggressive a mitigation strategy, even if the governor's orders have largely been rescinded and we're in phase 3 and there's a lot more sectors of society have opened up and there are fewer restrictions on gathering sizes, yes, it's still a local decision. And if we feel that in furtherance of the public health and order that we want to continue to do 2 times a day cleaning, as long as we still have those funds available and the board authorizes it, absolutely we can continue to do so.
Great answer. Thank you, Mike.
Sure.
Travis, do you need a vote on this, or do you have just consensus to move around on your balance sheet? I prefer to be just consensus. You have a job to do, and I don't want the board's votes at this point be hamstringing you, but do you want to vote?
Yeah, I think so. The one thing that to Ben's point, right, is there something outside of facilities that we want to look holistically? I could bring back certainly a number of other things that we've talked about. Solid waste is one that we talked about, an impact of assuming CARES. Again, some of these things we'd have to think about how long we're going to see the impacts of COVID compared to how long things that we can control, specifically, we can cancel the service of the 2 times a day when we feel it's appropriate. Behavioral changes of people who've impacted the solid waste budget, or the needs of the COA may continue to linger into 22. Right. So I think at some point we can look at it holistically of all the things and decide if we want to remove it all, or sort of look at that particular item. I'm happy to approach it either way.
Well, I think there's a consensus to look at CARES Act money as a resource to offset our FY22 balance sheet. Those are circumstances brought to us by the pandemic, and the pandemic funding should pay for them. So, but in consideration, I think what Ben's trying to bring out, what Tina's trying to bring out, it'd be better to look at this holistically. So why don't you bring to us in a week or two the idea of what the total number would look like for all affected departments for FY22.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I would just add one other thing is that I think we want to think about some of these things. There's certainly going to be a sunset on some of these things, but if we want to think that these things might go on further, we might want to think about including it in the budget, because we don't know how long or if there will be CARES funding in the future, and having it budgeted now makes it a little easier to bring in later.
your question earlier to Chief Cassidy, isn't there a chance that additional federal funding will flow to the town of Holliston, similar to?
Theoretically. Maybe.
Yeah,
Maybe
a
not.
whole bunch of what ifs, right? And who knows? And
Until there's money, until they tell us, we always have to assume no.
But it boils down to some of the, post-pandemic decision-making that a lot of folks are gonna have to confront, the public sector especially. We've established this
Yeah.
level of expectation for, site cleanliness and sterilization and so forth, so once the pandemic ends and the money's gone, will the expectation be that, you take down all the face guards, the social distancing rules, all those, do they just go away, or is this our new norm? We don't know. So,
nor how people will return to normal behavior from before the pandemic.
sure.
Zoom calls, internet.
All right, so
access.
Travis, if you could bring back, what would be the holistic number that could benefit our balance sheet, we'll look at it then, okay? Moving on, board business, Ben, we'll start with the police drug impaired driving enforcement training grant.
Sure, this is a exciting thing to see. I'm gonna make a motion to, accept a gift for the Holliston Police Department from the International Association of Chiefs of Police in the amount of $113,742, and it is for drug impaired driving enforcement training. We're waiting on an account number for where to be received in our balance sheet.
Right, did you make a motion?
I did.
All right, I'll second that with a question. Was this an FY 21 grant as well? Has the police department received this grant before, do we know?
I do not have it on my FY 21 list, of tracking grants. And certainly not in that size. That is a sizable grant.
It was awarded, December 23rd, 2020, and it expires December 28th, 2021, so it looks like an annual calendar year grant from the International Association of Chiefs of Police.
Thank you. I second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
That carries. Next one, the auxiliary police grant.
I will make a motion, to accept a grant, to the Holliston Auxiliary Police Department from the Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency, MEMA, in the amount of $2,500, and it is for auxiliary, for new parkas, and it will be received to the, Auxiliary Police Department grant account. Oh, I made that motion.
I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Thank you. Award notice, do you have that, Pat? Excuse me, Ben?
Well, false. Let's see, I have
The town hall windows,
Town
Cronenberger and Sons?
hall windows, I have the water main Winter Street.
Should be in the packet. It is for, Cronenberger and Sons. Let me just pull it up here. So James and I opened that bid on February 17th. Unfortunately, we only had one bidder. Fortunately, that bidder has been found to be responsive and responsible. References checked out, and the $92,000 is under the $150,000 appropriation, though I will point out that within the $150,000 scope of the CPC funded project, there are other things outside of this contract, but $92,000 does fit within the budget that was set for this particular piece of the windows at Town Hall.
I'll entertain a motion to approve the contract award of $92,000 to Cronenberger and Sons Restoration Incorporated out of Middleton, Connecticut for the town hall windows project.
I will make that motion.
I'll second it.
All those in favor say aye.
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 That carries. Said you had the next one, Ben, the water.
So we have, an award notice for the, water main, and Parkinson? I can't even pronounce that word.
I think you did a good job. That passes.
Parkinson, on, Winter Street, and, it is to CJP and Sons Construction Company in Millis, Massachusetts. And their bid is for $1,624,450.50.
You're making a motion on that?
I am.
I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 That carries.
Just point out very quickly that again, $2.8 million is the total appropriation for that one. And so this is obviously not, for that entire scope of what was the $2.8 million, but this is the particular bidded out piece, which we received back and does fit within the overall budget.
Incidentally, on the side, Travis and I exchanged some emails today. I've asked him, right around the time we do articles, to bring forth a running list of previously approved projects at town meetings. I think you said the last 2 years he hasn't canceled.
I do, yeah.
So that we, as a board, can review and inform the public how we're progressing on some of these projects against what was authorized. Let folks know that we are getting the job done. So,
And to that point, tomorrow's a big day, isn't it? Out front with the doors.
They came today to do the initial piece. It's going to take a little while, but yes, they were on site today.
Okay, that's
Very exciting.
Ben, I would like you to make a motion for the select board meeting minutes.
Sure. Okay, I will make a motion to approve select board meeting minutes for February 1st, 2021, and February 4th, 2021.
I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that carries. Then we have a host community agreement amendment, manufacturing for Mid-Dairy.
Yes, so I'll just give a little bit of background here. Original HCA for Mid-Dairy was April 2019 for a medical and recreational grow host community agreement. This amendment is simply to add manufacturing, which is still within the same general scope. There is no retail within this. And so just for a little bit of history, we have done this previously. It really has to do with changes that came as this industry has evolved in Massachusetts. We have amended a previous HCA to do the same thing, which is to have grow and manufacturing together. Again, it does not include any type of retail at this time.
All right, you needed a motion on that, Travis?
That would be great. They're at 44 Boynton Road.
Do you have enough there to make the motion, Ben, or do you want me to craft it?
I will make a motion to amend the host community agreement for the siting of a marijuana cultivation establishment in the town of Holliston with Mid-Dairy Incorporated of 44 Boynton. I forget that, is it street? I forget.
Road.
Is that satisfactory?
To include manufacturing.
To include manufacturing.
Do I have a second?
I will second that with a question. They are not currently operating as a cultivator yet. Is that correct?
They have their occupancy as of October 2020, and they are still progressing through the CCC's process and are currently not at the final stage of the CCC's process as it comes to the grow facility to have the chain of custody to change hands with product. They're not at that stage yet. That's kind of the final stage of the CCC, but they are certainly progressing through the process, and since October, they've had their CO from the building inspector.
Okay, and then once they get whatever the final approval is from the CCC, they then are able to start operations as a cultivator and a manufacturer.
Yes.
There's nothing more on the town side is what I'm asking.
No.
Okay.
No.
I'll second that.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that carries. All right, we'll move on to an appointment for an auxiliary police officer. Ben, do you have that ready?
I will make a motion to appoint Eric Eman, I apologize if I mispronounced that, as an auxiliary police officer.
For term ending
That's what I'm
June
trying to-
30th, 2021.
All right, yes.
Good. Have a second?
Yeah, I'll second that.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye, that carries. All right, Ben, following along with me, we have the Community Farm Advisory Committee appointment.
Okay, I will make a motion to appoint Shannon Gratton to the Community Farm Advisory Committee and to a term ending on June 30th, 2021.
I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Carries. I see Shannon's on our call. Congratulations, Shannon. Good luck up at the community farm. Next, we have an appointment to the Youth and Family Services. Ben, if you'd like to move that forward.
Sure. I will make a motion to, appoint Kristen Haddad to, Youth and Family Services, with a term ending on June 30th, 2021.
I will second that.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, that carries. We'll move on to other business. Ben,
I
any?
don't have any other business. There's 2 things to say.
Thank you, sir. Tina, any other business?
I just want to thank Kristen and Shannon for stepping up to serve in the 2 capacities that they've offered to volunteer, so thank you very much.
Okay, I have no other business. Any other business on the Zoom call this evening? Very well, the board will now adjourn to executive session for reasons number 6 and 2. If you would like to, are those on the board available to us?
Can't rubberneck like that, sorry.
You don't have that reason 6 and 2 in the board?
I don't have the...
Value of property, and, non-union, personnel.
Good. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to executive session for those reasons.
I'll make that motion with the comment that we will not be returning to regular session at the conclusion of executive session.
And doing so by roll call.
I second that, and Tina Hine, aye.
Vince Farrell, aye.
John Cronin, aye. We'll move us out of this portion of our meeting. Thanks for joining us. We will see you Thursday.